recording. There we go. This should have fixed it. Little microphone issues. Can you guys hear me well in Discord and see my screen? Just confirming with y'all. Awesome. So yeah, feeling a little bit tired, but you guys know it. It drains you to be looking at charts for so long and having to stay concentrated, having to stay locked in to what you're looking for, right? So definitely on the harder side this week. I did want to start on a daily chart just due to our weekly outlook, right? What were we looking for? Well, very simple. We were looking for price to trade up above this high, which is previous week's high. So let me just mark it out. And then trade lower. This is exactly what we got, but we didn't have this in the time period I was specifically looking for. So yes, Tuesday made the beautiful high of week. That was wonderful. There was also SMT at this point in time, right, with previous week's high. Let me just mark it out so it's a little easier for you guys to see. Well, it would be easier to note in a 4-hour time frame, right? Looking at these swings, looking specifically here. Let's just say I use the correct template so it's easy for you guys to see. Previous week high, SMT at a key level, higher time frame SMT. This is the same time and time again. This same exact logic will prove efficient, right? So definitely some very nice result to our plan, but it happened on Wednesday. I'm personally starting to trade every single trading day. Why? Well, we're coming close to elections, and I'm also getting ready for a potential well, I don't know how I could call it, but I want to take part in some trading competitions. And for that, I need to concentrate on return and not consistency. And so I'm starting once again to trade every single day, slowly but surely. So I was able to catch parts of this week, but for a first high probability trading day on Thursday, pretty rough PA. We're going to have a deeper look into it in a second. I did want to showcase first in the hourly time frame, which is a time frame I utilize personally to look at the weekly development. You can see right here to the right, using 2 degrees indicator power 3, you can see the current weekly candle. And more specifically, we can also go ahead and plot the new week opening gap. All that we did was consolidate over up until a manipulation, with, of course, SMT to confirm, and then expanded away. After the day that expands aggressively towards our drawn liquidity, and we got to take into account that this took out previous week's low. So this is a very big liquidity objective, and then we had a nice reversal towards the end of Wednesday. Well, coming into Thursday, the max I would expect out of this day is to be a retracement. Now, if we go ahead and go back to the daily, I expect Thursday to retrace into our current range. Well, where is our current range? Let's plot it. And I'm doing a lot of time frame this, time frame that, switching quite a bit, but I do want to showcase the logic that I utilize. So for me, it's all about utilizing the daily range, but I'm just going down to a 4-hour chart because I don't have inefficiencies formed when I'm looking at a range that was formed in a day and looking at the next day specifically. Now, within this range, where would I look for a retracement objective? Well, I would look for my first premium inefficiency, and this inefficiency is at equilibrium, so I would not even consider it. And for me, that first premium inefficiency is that bearish fair value gap. So I wanted to see price go all the way up there. But right on open, we did not want to go up all the way and went all the way back down to this big daily volume imbalance, which is our new day opening gap. And that showcases stats that I'm not going to share the specific stats. You can find them in the Rice Statistics app if you want. But when you have new day opening gaps over a certain size, you can see from when we revisit that gap that we are drawn to it constantly. So it is a very big drawn liquidity for the current day if you have a gap of a specific size. And if we look here at the exact size, you'll see 19.75 handle. Let's just call it 25 handles. This is not a freakishly, I'm forgetting the word for it, but it is not an extremely big gap, but it is what I would consider a big gap. Anything above 15 handles, anything above average pretty much is a pretty big gap in my book. So huge draw to the downside. So looking for lower, go get this draw. to go higher to our retracement objective. This was the plan for me. Now the resulting PA was horrible. All right, so there was definitely opportunities, but as you can see just by going on a 15-minute chart, and I will remove this so we can see a little bit easier. Did I remove the wrong one? 9:30? No, took a little bit to load. We had a very rough time today. You can see from the 15-minute candles, a lot of back and forth, a lot of high resistance move up until we had our low resistance liquidity run lower right here. Sorry for my horrible drawing. And then we had a nice distribution higher during lunch to then continue in the PM. For me, looking at this with hindsight, right? So looking at this day with hindsight, what moves would I want to be part of? Well, of course, you want to be part of high of day to low of day, for sure. But within my New York session, I wouldn't want to be a part of this move, continuation lower. I'd much rather wait for the manipulation to take place, right? And I'm going to remove previous week low, and this was our retracement objective higher. I much rather wait for the manipulation to happen. And why would it need to go back down there? It did not need to. But it also did not need, well, it wasn't 100% that it was done at this point. Because yes, we're going to target consolidations, but we also have a lower consolidation, which is a very high probability objective for some downside. Right, so you had both in mind, and I'm going to plot both so that once we go down the time frame, we can look at it. But personally, the move I want to be a part of is after manipulation, look for distribution. So in my specific book, I'd wait for this retracement lower. And let me just go in replay mode so that we can see the daily open as well. I'd wait for this retracement lower, go and put in a daily low since we only had expansion up to now. So you need to see manipulation to then have a continuation and then look for opportunities. And if we go down to the 1 minute, we had 9:45 PMI today. So I would have waited for 9:45. Let me just put it on the chart. Looking at 9:45, what are you looking for? You're looking for manipulation. Well, you have a very beautiful manipulation lower. Right then and there, Judas swing lower, taking out that first consolidation objective that we saw, right? So right then and there, I'm looking for longs. But I don't have a breaker to play off of until we see this specific breaker. Yes, there is a lower time frame breaker within this. I am going to show it to you guys just so you can visualize it. Right here, there is a 30-second breaker that would have given you an earlier entry. But personally, these are too low probability for me and require too much filtering. So I like to not go under the 1 minute in most cases. When we are going very quickly on a very high probability day, a large range day, and more specifically a trending day, I don't mind going a little more aggressive and going down to a 30-second, 15-second chart. And if we look at a yes, at this point in time, you had a very nice breaker, so you could have entered at 9:56. But seeing NASDAQ not form that breaker would have led to me waiting. More specifically as well, you have no fair value gaps being formed. The only fair value gap you formed after the news, of course, after 9:45, is this tiny little guy right here, which with my two width lines, you can't even see. So one tick, perhaps two, so 37.5 right here. If we're looking here, you see 37.25. So a one tick fair value gap that got invalidated right here, right? Inversed and then invalidated. So you're not displacing into different places, right? You're not displacing away from any objectives. But once you see this displacement also forming fair value gaps, this can be a long signal. And then you have your inversion fair value gap to the left, which would allow for you to enter right on this level. Let me just mark it out right here on the retest on this inverse fair value gap, looking for higher objectives. Of course, these relative equal highs taken out by only a tick is not enough for me. And then you have relative equal highs higher. You have data highs right here. You had 830, news as well. So definitely some higher objectives there. You could justify that this is enough manipulation after taking out this important point in liquidity. Entering here gives you a stop. Well, you have your fair value gap, you have your inverse fair value gap, and you would allow for it to trade all the way back down to that order block. giving you quite a large stop loss. To be honest, I would have waited to have at least a stop loss. 37.5 is my maximum stop loss size. So I would have waited and seen if it gave me the opportunity with a deeper retracement. But even if we're just pessimistic like this and we look at our furthest possible objective, this does not even offer 2R. This is our minimum. This is how I filter low probability setups, right? It doesn't allow me to have enough risk to reward. And to consider a partial, I would be looking at this high to look for partial objectives, and that would be just under 1R. So still not enough. Because of this, I would not have considered this trade. Also due to the fact that we did not have SMT at this point in time. So as you can see, we took out all of these levels on both assets right at the same time. So you had no SMT. You also had no short-term SMT at this point in time. You had some along the way here, but this is what we're going to be talking about in a second. I wanted to share this setup and why it was not a trade in my book. Now you're here. You have SMTs forming on both sides of the range, right? So you had short-term SMT right here. Let me just remove this gap. You had short-term SMT here. You have SMT on the lows. And then you also have SMTs forming on the highs. So yes, I did want to point it out correctly. So you have SMTs forming everywhere, right? I don't need to draw them out specifically. You can see it. These are uncorrelated markets. What does this tell you? I am consolidating. All of this, you already know you are consolidating. And we have a very simple framework. Whenever you're consolidating, you wait until 10:30. More specifically, you would wait until the 10:50 to 11:10 macro to frame some trade opportunities out of this consolidation, and more specifically, based on this consolidation. So if I'm waiting until 10:30, what am I going to be looking for at 10:30, right? This is me marking out the opening range. When I'm looking at 10:30, because I see consolidation in the opening range of New York, I'm looking for a raid. So I'm looking for us to take either the high of this opening range or the low, which in my specific case, as I explained, I was looking for lower prices to then go higher. So I was looking for us to rate the low. Well, starting at 10:30, that's what you want to see. And when you see a poor attempt at that, inducing the highs, well, this is not a short that you'd want to take a lot. Now, personally, seeing this consolidation, I thought that we were just going to be ranging. Why? Because as I stated, after a large range day, you expect a small range day. So the only thing I expected was a retracement into our current range. In these specific conditions, I'm willing to go for low-hanging fruit trades, some scalps if you prefer. And so this breaker, utilizing this breaker to go short, along with I had an inverse fair value gap, a tiny little guy. Once again, I don't care for size of the fair value gap. I do include the volume imbalance on all my fair value gap. But even if you didn't, it was one tick fair value gap once again. So utilizing this fair value gap gave you a pretty nice short. But even then, that short, let's just set up actually the stop loss first. So fair value gap, you have order block, and you'd allow it to trade all the way back to the other order block as well. You do have SMT, something that we do have to point out. You have SMT between these swing points that form the breaker. So it is a pretty nice setup in that sense, but we induce the highs and you're shorting right after. Now in a ranging market, we're always going to be doing this. So it is fine if you take into account, and I am going to remove this first line, if you take into account manipulation. So I'm looking for us to take out the low to then go take out the high. I'm going to have a partial where? Well, looking at this, very simple. I'm going to have a partial at logical liquidity objectives, right? So right here. And this allowed for quite some nice R, to be honest, 2.51. On a day like this, you should be happy with this and leave your charts. Personally, I was not. I was a little bit greedy today, so I was looking for more. And as you can see, after your partial, you would have been stopped out break even. It was a very hard day to filter. But on days like this, when you see very high resistance conditions, first of all, it's better to just leave. Because maybe you'll get a setup, maybe not. Chances are you're just going to get stopped out 5 times before you do. But if you're focusing on returns, right, and not consistency, which, as I explained, this is what I'm switching towards now with some different goals in mind than just creating consistent income, then you can stay on your charts and look, but you have a lot of filtering to do. And especially when you see SMTs, both sides of a range, wait for 1030. I'm looking for a raid. I'm trading that raid. So I'm trading the manipulation lower. Got stopped out. And then, of course, beautiful delivery. And yes, there was a setup. Well, actually, this does not look like a swing low. It is not. So you did not even have a breaker at this point in time up until later around 11:30, and to be honest, not much good happens after 11 on most days. So looking at this, yes, I can say, look at this beautiful setup. You could have entered here, targeted opening range low for 3R, then targeting our higher time frame objective for 4.88R. Yes, sure. But personally, I like to be pessimistic. And in the markets live today, if I just took this short and then just got stopped out break even, I'm not trying to short again. We already induced these highs, the opening range high, inducing them once again, forming low resistance liquidity at this point in time. Call it trend line liquidity if you prefer. I don't care what name you give it. But we were inducing this zone, these highs, the liquidity above these highs. So shorting here was already risky. Shorting here is extremely risky. So I wouldn't want to consider this short, but you know, can still showcase it to you guys. Yeah, look at this beautiful unicorn, whatever, right? Truth is, for me, the real opportunity happened during lunch. And sadly, I don't trade during lunch. So I'm not even going to share it. But you guys can clearly see you had a nice long. After a failed long, you would have had a nice long opportunity. Even then, just proving my point, even if you have a nice setup, you're going to get stopped out a few times before it works. So is it worth it? No, just go away, right? Take a step back. But then, of course, in the PM, you did have a nice power hour move, right? Looking at the last 1 hour of trading specifically of the day, you had a very nice push to the upside, and your opening range high was already taken. You'd be looking, as I stated, at these highs earlier. And of course, finally, data highs, which we did not reach at this point in time. But allowing this, what would you be looking in the PM? Well, for me, it's very simple. I'm either looking for a lunch trade, which in this case, I was looking for a higher after our lower objectives have been met. So I would never have been looking for a lunch trade to go short, right? If ever I get a lunch trade set up to go short when I'm bullish, I'll just wait for us to do that move. And then once we've taken our other objective, I'll frame a reversal out of this. But if that doesn't happen, I would look for 2 p.m. power of 3. These are the only two setups I would ever consider in the PM session. At this point in time, there is only one thing missing, SMT, right? You can see this on our open low of our beautiful 2 p.m. 4-hour candle. You do have a setup, a potential setup, and it would have went to your drawdown very aggressively for a while and just offering you, like, let's say you entered here, right? Just barely to offer you around 40, 50 handles. So we can talk about it all we want. Sorry about the notification, guys. There are setups, there are opportunities, but there are no high probability opportunities. Even our first morning setup that I shared right here was not a high probability opportunity in my book. So on days like this, even though it makes for a boring price action review, I just got to be honest with you guys and say that it's just a losing day. For my specific model, it's either losing day or I managed to catch this at half risk, or to be honest, I just didn't trade at all. Which I do regard as a losing day because there usually are setups, usually are opportunities. It is very rare that you'll see me come on a high probability trading day, right? A day with high impact news and tell you there were no opportunities today. But for me, there were no high probability opportunities today with my specific model. Do you guys have any questions? These are the type of days where if you're looking at it as a trader, you have to be able to choose, right? And I don't mind going over some step-by-step basis if you guys need help on this. Because yes, with hindsight, it's all fun and games seeing SMTs on both sides of a range and taking a step back. But you already have what would be the word for it? You already have insights that we're consolidating, right? Very high resistance. We're not forming fair value gaps. You could have known this was consolidating beforehand. And yes, of course, with that breakout higher, it gives you incentive to go long. But then you see the aggressive retracement. Maybe you took a loss here. And right after, you should be waiting for 1030. And then, of course, after inducing the highs, once again, you have a tiny ass short opportunity. As you guys can tell, it did not go well for me today. Was just a boring day. Spent 3 hours in front of the charts for pennies on the dollar. I'm not seeing any of you guys type, so I'm guessing it was all clear for today. Not much insights I can give you on days like this. Very slow. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to see if you have any questions, but if not, we're going to call it a day. Boring day, quick PA review. What can I say? All right. Well, I wish you all a great night. Good luck trading tomorrow, hopefully, and I do expect a little bit nicer PA. Hopefully, we get some nice retracements, and a continuation lower would be best and what I'm specifically looking for. Don't let me affect your bias, but good luck trading tomorrow, and have a great night, guys.